Hello, world, and welcome to another fantastic No-Brainer Show. I'm Big Daddy, the GOAT, here at NoBrainerShow.com. And to my, well, it could be your left, could be my right, I don't know where I am, is my hostess with the mostest, D-Rex. What's up, brother?
Yeah,
I
I'm
missed,
caught somewhere in the middle here.
I missed you last week.
You did? You
We
sure?
made fun of you on the show because you were slacking.
I do watch it,
No,
so I think you should just be
I
careful
know.
with that. I catch all the little lies. Okay, I
Oh,
catch
there's
all
no
the,
lies. There's no
let's call
lies.
them
All right.
inconsistencies. Let's call them exceptions. But I catch
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
And also our media thing is off because I was going to give myself a huge cheering, roaring intro, and it just isn't playing. So
Well, stop messing with it. Don't break things.
Dang.
All right. Well, tonight we got a fantastic show. We have a special guest this evening, Brian Livingston.
Hey guys, glad to be here.
Mine's not working
Excellent.
at all.
Huh?
I'm still Riverside's kind of giving me the runaround today, man. I don't know if it's me or you, but
It's you.
whatever. We're happy to have you here,
Just
Brian.
remember, it's
Thanks,
always
guys.
you, Brian. So we met. I don't remember if we met through Facebook or did we meet through an outside agency. Either way, we got you as a guest. We tried to get you on last month, but we've been booked up. We're booked up for 90 days, Derek. Did I tell you that?
Yes.
I got us booked out for good. So, Brian, tell us some exciting stuff about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Where did you get this passion for what you're doing now? Because I saw you had an illustrious career. I guess was it with Caterpillar?
Yeah. I spent about the last 20 years of my career with Caterpillar. But way before then, I started college as a chemical engineer. Well, I finished as one too, but so I spent my career in engineering, and last 20 years, was with Caterpillar in their diesel engine division. So I understand enough chemistry to get in trouble, and I understand enough about diesel engines to get in trouble. I worked in the diesel engine division of Caterpillar, so kind of got involved with a lot of their business their business divisions and stuff like that, because almost everything they do has engines in it. So that was a really good experience. What got me to where I'm at today, though, and some of you folks might find this interesting, or you might find it like, oh yeah, I'd been through that. At the beginning of COVID, Caterpillar fired about 4,000 of us to make the quarter end numbers meet. And yeah, that happens.
Yes.
Yeah. And so here I am. You can tell by looking at me, I'm not exactly a spring chicken. So, an old guy looking for a job in the middle of COVID, not a good recipe for success. But I had a friend of mine who talked to me about a technology that he had just kind of seen to make diesel engines burn cleaner. And I thought, that's something I better check out. So anyway, we can get into that a little bit more, later when the time is right. But so that's what I'm doing now. Being forced out of corporate America, which I had been in, my whole career, being forced out on the street and said, oh, okay, well, I guess it's time to be an entrepreneur, which I never thought I would be, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yes.
I'm also a huge believer in the sovereignty of God. So his hand is on all this stuff.
Amen.
And yeah. And so it's like, well, when there's no other choice, sometimes it wouldn't, for those of you spiritually minded, when you are really looking for God's will, sometimes it's tough to tell, but when he shuts all the other doors and this is the only one you can go through, well, then it's pretty easy,
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And so that was the case for me.
Did you grow up wanting to be an engineer? I mean, did you know that was the path you were going to take? And where did you grow up again?
Well, I grew up in a little town called Morris, Illinois. It's about it's southwest of Chicago, maybe an hour and a half. Yeah, my mom could give you a few horror stories of me wanting to be an engineer since I was a kid. Always taking things apart, always trying to figure out how things were made. Always scored really high on the science, part of the standardized tests and stuff.
Right.
And, my mom would walk into my room sometimes and go, "What in the world is all this?" And I say, "Well, Mom, if you step on this thing over here, it opens my closet door."
What's the craziest thing you took apart or built when you were a child in your bedroom?
Ooh, there's a good question.
I
We
know,
lost your
isn't
camera,
it?
Derek.
What? Come on, man. I'll get
Yeah,
it
you
back. I'll get it
disappeared.
back. You can answer it. I'll
Okay.
disappear and come back. How's that?
He's hiding. It was probably, I don't know. I mean, everything I had, I just took apart: radios, bicycles, anything that didn't work. Hey, let me look at it. I'll take it apart.
Right.
And you guys remember the Dilbert comics about engineers?
Yes.
In so many ways, the young Dilbert growing up kind of feels like me. Yeah. So anything mechanical, anything that you need figuring out, problem solving. I mean, has been me my whole life. And so, yeah,
So
I kind of fell right into this engineering thing.
you went to college,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what college did you go to?
Well, graduated from Iowa State
No
in,
kidding. Okay.
in chemical engineering. Yeah.
My wife went to Iowa.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
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 So she's
They were
from
the
Iowa.
they were
So
the big sports rivals, between those
yes.
two in Iowa. Yeah.
When you went to school, you started right off the gate to become a chemical engineer?
I did. Yeah. Shortly before I started college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So it's kind of going into some general studies. And I had an older friend of mine who was actually my scoutmaster when I was younger. Um, he was a chemical engineer, and I said, "Well, what's a chemical engineer do?" And he said, "Well, let me explain it like this. A chemist comes up with something in his lab, test tubes and whatever, and then a chemical engineer figures out how to make money with it, how to build a plant, how to sell it, how to
Okay.
utilize it, where it's going to fit in the world, all those things." And I thought, "Ooh, applied science. That's exactly where I wanted to be all my life." Um, that was my career decision was, like right
Well,
there.
here's a funny story. I've been in sales all my life, and one of my jokes is if I can sell an engineer, then I know I'm doing good because our personalities are usually extremely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if I can make an engineer laugh, then I'm doing something
That
right.
never,
So
Yeah, that's
and
right.
that never
That-
happened, Zach. That never happened.
I actually have sold many
A
engineers.
vehicle
Thank
to
you.
an engineer.
Vehicle, yes.
You've never done a lunch and learn at a tier 1 automotive supplier.
I have not. No.
No. Brian can tell you all
I'm
about
sorry. I've
that.
sold cars to engineers for sure.
Yes. And so, Brian, in chemical
So,
engineering,
when-
is there?
Okay, so when you're looking, and forgive me because chemical engineering is not in my spectrum of understanding, other than I know you guys
Right.
work with chemicals,
Yeah.
you would
It's
sit
not
down
as a
and the chemist would come up with an idea, say, all right, you were with Caterpillar. They came up with a new idea to make the diesel run cleaner. And then you would go ahead and implement that idea to make sure it took off and was a whiz bang of a moneymaker.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, an engineer takes, an idea and figures out how to commercialize it.
Okay.
I mean, there's non-commercial stuff to do too, maybe even further back in the R&D chain or whatever. But most of us engineers wind up in like project management or something like that, where you're trying to figure out how to do something, how to make something more efficient, uh, faster, cheaper, better, those kinds of things. That's really what I've spent most of my career doing.
So when you got on with Caterpillar, you spent 20 years with them.
Yeah.
What did you work with them? Were you working on the machinery or were you working on building the plants to make the machines sustainable?
Neither.
Okay.
Neither. Yeah. When I started my career with Caterpillar, coming in as a chemical engineer, they needed some help in their after treatment area. And after treatment is like the filters and the catalysts and stuff. Like we all have catalytic converters on our cars these days. That's called after treatment. And in trucks and mining equipment and anything that burns a lot of diesel these days, if you're at a high level of like everybody has to be in the United States now, Tier 4 final, but they call that level from the EPA. You've got like a diesel particulate filter, and then you've got a NOx reduction system, and those kinds of things. Oh, that's called after treatment, and it's kind of real chemistry based. So they needed some help in chemical engineering side, and I just kind of fit right into that. I kind of teased the Caterpillar people a little bit because they've probably got about 25,000 mechanical engineers and maybe 3 chemical engineers. You know?
So, okay, I used to be a diesel owner. I had a big diesel 2500 truck.
Okay.
Why on God's green earth do they make you use that DEF? What does that do? Please help me understand it, because it was really a pain in the neck.
Well, yes, it can be a pain in the neck, but that is what takes the NOx out of your exhaust. You know, when I said something like, a NOx reduction system, there was kind of 2 ways you could do it in the beginning, and the world has kind of settled on this DEF, the diesel exhaust fluid system, which is like a urea. And I can't get into the chemistry of all that right now. It's not important, but you have to put that in so that you squirt it onto a surface that then your exhaust gas goes through, and it catalyzes a reaction that reduces the NOx coming out the other end.
So is that why diesel trucks now don't blow black smoke everywhere? What we call rolling coal.
Rolling coal. Yeah, well, that's the next thing, actually. After you take the NOx out, then you take the soot out. And that's done in what they call a diesel particulate filter, which is really just a filtration system that your exhaust goes through and takes out all those fine particles, those fine, tiny little pieces of what we would call smoke, or soot. And then every once in a while, when you're filtering stuff, it just keeps collecting, right? So sooner or later, start developing some back pressure, and then you have to burn it out. So then you do some trickery with the engine to make your exhaust really hot. And then it actually lights all those tiny, tiny little charcoal briquettes on fire inside your diesel particulate filter. And then it burns it all out, and then there's just some ash left. And then away you go. And then until eventually the ash builds up so much that you have to take it out, clean it, or replace it or something.
Well, I will admit, there's nothing better than a diesel truck, the sound. I just love the sound of it. But I was sadly disappointed when my truck didn't, blow smoke. I was like, dadgummit, man. I wanted to, but I understand.
Yeah. Well, perhaps all the people behind you appreciate your new truck.
Absolutely. Well, I always joke with, when we have a grocery store down here called Publix. Yeah. And they say, is plastic okay? Because they have paper or plastic. And I'm like, well, yeah, plastic's fine. I go, not for the environment, but what do I care? But that's, of course, my joke. So you worked with them for 20 years. COVID hit. You were part of the downsizing or unfortunate block chopping. You decided to become an entrepreneur, which our show is about successful entrepreneurs and business people.
Yeah.
Tell us about your now business, what you do, how it came about. What's your super fantastic idea you got going on?
Yeah. Well, let me grab a prop right behind me here because it's kind of integral to the story.
I usually use Derek as my prop, but we'll let you have a prop.
Well, I've got something a little perhaps more dangerous than him, but this thing looks like a copper tube filled with stuff because that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
You can see it's got some threads on the inside there, so basically you screw this into your fuel line, and your diesel fuel line is you flow diesel through here. You have these long chains that are diesel, right? And you break up a few of those because of the catalysts that are in here, rare earth catalysts. And so you break a few of those long ones into shorter chains, and shorter chains burn more efficiently than longer chains. If you remember that from your high school chemistry. And so the effect of that is you increase the efficiency of the combustion in the cylinder of your truck or whatever, and you get like 5 to 7% better fuel economy and lower emissions. So you're saving money as well as lowering emissions at the same time. Now, we were talking earlier about after treatment. Those things are generally pretty expensive on the back end of an engine. In fact, on some modern large engines, they're almost take up as much room as the engine itself. But that costs a lot of money, and then normally that costs you in fuel economy to some degree, and so you kind of take a hit both ways. And but if you treat the fuel before you put it in, which is what we do here with this thing, you you save money, use less fuel, and lower emissions at the same time, which is kind of the exact opposite is true if you do a post treatment or an after treatment system. So that's really the edge. If you want to talk about this technology, the edge it has is you pre-treat the fuel, take some of those longer chains, cut them into shorter chains, and then you get a more efficient burn. Which also means, we were talking about smoke earlier, if you produce less soot in the combustion chamber, now what is soot? Unburned hydrocarbons, right? And so, when we talk about rolling coal, you're actually putting fuel out of the tank or out of the stack that you could have been burning to get more power. And the reason people kind of associate rolling coal with high power is because you're kind of starving your engine for oxygen. I think that's what, yeah, that's how that works. And so you get a lot of these unburned hydrocarbons coming out. But anyway, if you stop that, you can actually have more power going to pushing your piston down instead of blowing smoke or whatever, or busting up the other molecules inside, the cylinder at the moment. So anyway,
Now,
I know I'm rambling here. Go ahead.
Well, is this part made for big diesel engines, or can you put it on a diesel car, or is it specifically for farm equipment or tractors, or what is it for?
Yeah, well, the technology, the technology in this thing is just straight chemistry and physics. In fact, this chemistry of splitting these molecules is done in oil refineries all over the world every day. So there's nothing new about the chemistry. It's very established. The idea of putting it in something like this and then sticking it under the hood of your truck, that's a little bit novel and new, but there's nothing new about the chemistry and the physics. So we make these things in several sizes. So yeah, you can use them. We go down to maybe about 250 horsepower, and then go up to, large mining truck or locomotive, 4,000 or 5,000 horsepower.
Right.
So different sizes and different ways to, use this device.
And are you selling it to the manufacturers, or are you selling it to the general public?
Generally, we're selling to the end users. So like railroads, port companies, construction companies, mining companies, the diesel electric generators, over the road trucking. Those are the real sweet spots for the applications. Like, for example, if we put this in a truck, like an over the road truck, most trucks in the US will do about 120,000 miles a year. And this will give you you'll save enough fuel to get about 100% payback. So a 1 year payback. Yeah. And that's kind of our worst case, if you will. If you drink a lot more diesel than that, like in a locomotive or a mining truck or something, it's usually more like about 3 or 4 months, payback. So that's 3 or 400% return on investment.
Okay, good. Now, can they use it on big diesel ships?
Yep.
Okay, so any type of diesel engine it can be used on.
Yeah. In fact, because this thing, it changes the fuel, it doesn't change the engine, so you don't have to do any engine adjustments or anything, especially in a modern engine. So, like, even if you put this on an oil-fired boiler or oil-fired furnace, you get that same. Actually, you get a little better fuel economy from that, a little higher than 5 to 7%. So yeah, because it changes the fuel, anything that uses diesel, whether it's an internal combustion engine or like a boiler where you just spray it into a flame box, you're going to get good results.
And who came up with this idea? Is this your invention?
No, it's not. No, although I do know the inventor quite well. The manufacturing for this takes place down in Florida, and I'm still in regular contact with the inventor. A little backstory here, because I know we like to talk about stories and how you get into entrepreneurs and stuff on the show.
Yes.
When I when I first, kind of learned about this, I was really skeptical. I mean, all those years with Caterpillar, in diesel engine, like, wait a minute, we didn't know about this, or at least we don't do it. What's going on here? This sounds suspicious. So I actually got on a plane and I went down to Florida and I met with the inventor and I met with the president of the manufacturing company. I met with the chairman of the board. I met with some customers. I met with some ex-employees even to kind of get the skinny on what's going on here.
Mhm.
And I also read through a whole stack of test reports from labs, engine laboratories, lots of customers' data. And once I figured out the chemistry of what's going on, breaking these molecules into shorter pieces, like, oh, well, of course this works. And of course they got the reams of test data to prove it as well. But yeah, the chemistry makes perfect sense to me now. And if somebody's interested to kind of learn more about that, I'm not going to go through I've got some really cool cartoons and some videos and stuff. And if anybody's really interested, in fact, let me go ahead and just pause and put in a plug here.
Sure.
If you want to know a little more, go to decarbonize5.com. And, that 5 is like 5%. So, you're talking about taking 5% out, decarbonize5.com. And there's some calculators there and a way to get to me. You sign up, get it right on my calendar if you want to, and we'll have a good chat. So I can go deep. Yeah, I go deeper into the chemistry if you want, anything like that.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, if there's anybody out there who has a big diesel company, this is the spot you want to go check out then to save some money, I guess.
Oh, if you're a diesel
what is
drinker,
your
please, let's
role?
talk. Yeah.
What is your role with the company?
Well, it's basically this sales and marketing. The manufacturing company makes the product, and they farm out, basically sales and marketing and such. And so I've picked this thing up, and because of my engineering and CAT background, I'm I want to say I know more about it than most anybody else, and that's probably true. It's probably true. Just leave
Hey,
it at
toot your
that.
horn if you got to. I don't. That doesn't phase me at all. I mean, you're
Yeah, I
proud of your
know. Yeah,
product.
I've never been much of a guy to do that, but yeah, and most people involved in the company would say that. So I do get a lot of requests around the company, and from even the inventor asking me, "Is this right or not?" So,
What is the biggest company as to date that has reached out and chatted with you about using this?
well, we we can't always share names because this thing turns out to be a competitive advantage. If you're doing a trucking company or whatever, if you think about trucks, fuel is your number two cost. And if you can take 5% out of your number two cost, that drops your bottom line pretty quick. And you can do whatever you want to with that. You can lower your cost to be more competitive, more shareholder dividends, however you want to use that. So we don't, sometimes we don't talk about customers a lot of times because of
Sure.
that. But yeah, we've had some major trucking companies. Right now, I'm working with one of the largest, actually in the world, I think. I want to call them a gravel pred operator, and they're actually called materials, the business, but the material is gravel. So it's a lot of mining. And I'm working with one of the largest ones there, and they have used us in the past. And they went away from us because somebody had talked to them about some liquid additives, and they used liquid additives for a few years and decided that was just a big waste of money. And now they've come back to us. They're outfitting their equipment with our technology. So yeah, I mean, and if somebody wants to get in, I can share some names on a more private basis, where some of the NDAs, the non-disclosure agreements have expired or whatever, and talk to some people in your industry, because we have lots of people we've worked with and customers in virtually every industry that uses diesel. So whatever your industry is, when we talk, I can talk, people in your industry.
Speaking of industries, I know something sustainable energy is very near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
Tell us, give me some thoughts on that. I mean, I see a lot of companies now going electric, or like there's a lot of here in Orlando, we have a lot of buses that run on oh my gosh, why am I propane, or
gas
yeah,
or
natural gas.
electric.
That's the word. Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
them are running on that. A lot of the not the gas trucks, the garbage trucks are that now. Amazon, the new electric trucks are all over the place.
Yeah. Yep.
Is this the wave of the future, or is this something that they're trying out? You think it's going to last? I mean, can an electric or a natural gas truck compete with a diesel truck?
Depends on what you call compete, because right now they're still more expensive. Um, and there's a lot of studies out there, and I've read a lot of these studies, and a lot of them seem to contradict each other. So I think that some of the science is still yet to be determined, but I think electric vehicles are great. I have nothing against them at all. My technology is totally not applicable for them, but I still salute them.
Sure.
But when you're talking heavier duty stuff, that's where it gets a little tougher. Let's just take a mining truck, for example. Um, if you have an additional, and I'm going to make up a number here because I don't really know what it is, but if you have 5 tons of batteries on your mining truck to get it in and out of the pit all the time, hauling, ore back and forth, that means every time you load it, you have to have 5 less tons of ore in it.
Right.
So you're increasing your cost that way. And of course, an electric mining truck is going to be significantly more expensive, than a diesel one. And so, again, people are trying this. I know Cat's trying it, and all the construction company manufacturers are testing out what they can do and all that. And I salute that. That's great. But my thing here is, what are we going to do now? Because mining trucks will last 25 years. So if we start doing electric mining trucks, we're not going to be done for another 25, 35 years.
Right.
And so what are we going to do in the meantime? There's some off-the-shelf technologies of this is just one that we can do right now. So why don't we do that? I get a little, I don't know if the word's upset's the right word, but when I see companies spending all their time and energy on this electric future that really isn't going to happen until everybody that's doing it is retired anyway,
But
completely.
do you think that's
And
like a do you
I'm
think
glad
that's
they're
like a
doing it.
public
Don't get me wrong on
interference
that.
problem though? Like,
But
do you think that's a
boy, don't forget. Oh, go
Derek,
ahead,
your
Derek.
mic is really low. Didn't hear a word you said. Sorry, Derek was asking a question.
Yeah. What was Derek?
I mean, do you think that your thoughts on that have something to do with that being a byproduct of I'm choosing my words carefully, public subsidy as opposed to market driving?
Oh, I mean, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it is.
I think my problem with this isn't the debate against the fuel source, or obviously the sustainability of fuel, the environmentally friendly. I don't think my argument has anything to do with the fuel source or the pursuit of environmental sustainability. It's more of the sustainability of private demand driven improvements versus public subsidy that really fog up what that future will be, and it really allow for temporary developments that waste that 25-year period. When let's say we scrap all those initiatives and we change the way we manufacture, and all of a sudden you have this technology and it's produced and it's not efficient, but it was funded, right? It wasn't funded by demand as much as it was funded by taxpayer money. And so we're like, well, we got to kind of use this. So we lose competitive market. And this, GD well, I'm not going to swear, but this well from Caterpillar, right? And being there for 20 years, what has happened globally with the company, manufacturing, cost cutting, everything that you were in business development internationally. This so well, how bad that can hurt us on a competitive scale, on an economic scale, when we're propelling technology that way through subsidy as opposed to demand and innovation, right? It's
demand can be kind of
it's debilitating.
demand can be kind of a two-pronged approach there. One is what the market wants, but also then what does the government want? And
But
you
we
kind
know
of have
India
to
and
pay
China
attention.
don't want the same things as us,
Well,
right?
correct.
Okay.
Although I'll tell you, in both of those countries, the emission standards are getting tighter and
Sure.
tighter, and so they are
But
taking that.
by what
a
governing
much better.
bodies?
Well, Indian government has made a similar setup to like what our EPA is, and they have some similar regulations. Like I mentioned earlier, the Tier 4 final. Well, we had a Tier 4 interim, and then we had a Tier 3, a Tier 2. Well, the Indian government has established those kinds of things too, because I'm more familiar with them. But I know the Chinese have something that's similar. So we're all kind of ratcheting up, and United States and Europe was kind of in the
But
lead on that.
were you primarily
went up.
like South America for your
What
international
about South America?
for your international footprint at CAT? Were you primarily like South America, or were you all over the place? Were you in every market?
No, all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, global.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how does culture affect that too, right? I mean, like EPA for US is a
Yep.
lot different culturally than EPA for China, right? And how does the government type affect that, right? You have a
Mhm.
capitalist democratic republic versus a socialist, like how that's my true wonder, and I don't think anyone can really answer that. But how are those things? We're talking about regulations being on kind of an equal stage so we can compete, but I'm not sure US EPA and Chinese EPA have the same mentality or philosophy to produce a similar standard, regardless of what the standard says. Like getting there and regulating it, and to what tier that goes down to, and how that's measured, to me is like, it's scary. It's scary, right? Because it's who really measures the consistency of that, with confidence? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we lost your sentence. Your last sentence.
I said, who measures that with
last
true?
party.
I says, who really measures the consistencies with true confidence and competence between cultural and governmental standards? Right? It's
Yeah.
Well,
I
I mean,
think
we
it's
even have that
extremely
issue here in America where
right.
the EPA standards here in Florida are probably way different than California.
Right.
And I know we have American EPA standards, but I think California is setting the bar very, very high.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Newsom said by 2035 everything was going to be electric in California.
I've heard things like that as well. And when you're a politician, it's kind of easy to make those kinds of things to to get some votes or whatever.
Right.
But making them happen is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
If you're following the news lately here in California, they're having a couple of really large refineries being shut down because they can't meet all the California emissions without spending a gazillion dollars. And so they're shutting them down. And California is kind of panicking right now because, wait a minute, who's going to supply us with gasoline and stuff now? And, the major refineries that are out there, like, I don't know, but they're not going to be us, And so
it baffles me to make a statement like that. And you have a society, rather large society, and you're going to tell them now everybody has to get an electric car. I mean, are they going to start making electric cars that people lower income people can afford? Because right now, look, Teslas are not cheap. They're great cars. I like them. I can't afford one. I mean, then I'm also a capitalist pig, so I drive my big gas truck. So, it's okay. But, I just find it, I do not have a problem with electric cars. I don't have a problem with natural, gas cars and stuff like that. I just don't think we're ever going to go away from combustible fuel. I don't think diesel or gas is ever going to go away. I mean, there's too much stuff we use it for, especially oil. We use oil for everything.
I mean, I completely agree with you. And that's really one reason why I'm happy to be in this space right now, because I can help people make a difference in not only their finances, but in their carbon footprint right now until we get to this utopian future of all electric or hydrogen or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yes.
But, I think Sometimes people ask me, what do you not want to be asked on this interview? And usually one thing I'll say is, well, I don't want to be pigeonholed into one end or the other of this spectrum of being a complete climate denier or whatever the derogatory term you want to use of that week,
Right.
Or somebody who's, part of what the naysayers are calling the new green scam. I'm not on either one of those ends. To me, it's pretty simple. The some of the data, as we know, was cooked in the beginning on this whole climate change thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was discovered. Um, are we making a difference in the climate? Seems like yes, we are. That seems
Sure.
kind of indisputable. Um, are Is it really a what do you call a crisis where we're going to go extinct as a human race in a few years? No, I don't think that either. But for me, it's pretty simple. When God created man in the garden, he said, take care of the place,
Right.
and I think that's what we need to be doing today. Let's take care of the place. Now,
Oh,
there's
100%.
extreme here and extreme there, but if you can, for example, use less plastic bags, if you can use this technology to reduce your carbon footprint, especially when it's going to pay back so handsomely, so well, why would you not do that? It's kind of
Correct.
like recycling.
Yeah,
When
I like your mantra on it. I want to ask about your company is Zelcam, right?
Yes,
What's the product called? Is there an aftermarket name for it? Like, is there a brand for
well,
it?
the brand name is Rentar. Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like you have this thing successfully placed in a lot of aftermarket applications.
Yeah,
What is proprietary about it? Is it the actual process that shortens the chains within the actual component, or is it just really more about the placement of pre-fuel treatment? Because essentially, you're reducing the carbon in the byproduct, right?
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so
Well,
so why
there's
are
two
the
things going
OEMs
on
not
here.
all over like trying to get this licensed in all of their design? Because we take environmental economics and we learn, hey, I can sell a hybrid for X amount more because I'm going to have an ROI on my fuel efficiency. And it used to take let's go back 20 years. It used to, you do the environmental economics on like just a passenger vehicle hybrid, and it would be like 20 years to get your extra 10 miles per gallon out of your Civic because it already got 45 miles to the gallon, not being hybrid. It wasn't
Yep.
economical, so the market didn't really
Yep.
kind of rejected the Volt and the Bolt and kind of took the Prius to kind of really push it into people, taking notice and moving that technology, the hybrid technology, and finding the electric. In your field, if you've successfully implemented this on a lot of like aftermarket designs, why? I'm assuming you have something patented, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's been a number of patents issued for this thing, and a number of them are also still
So
active.
so why isn't there
The
like some
proprietary part is the formula for the rare earth metals in there.
okay.
And yeah, I mean, you could certainly buy your own copper tube and stick, stuff in there, but it may or may not work.
So
Or it
in
may or may not work
fastener
as well.
manufacturing, let's go to metals. We had engineering groups that would come up with designs for threads that there was one called matte thread, and they'd essentially go into the OEMs and they would get it spec'd on all the prints. They'd take a 5% royalty as the
Mhm.
engineering firm, and then there were ways to make it without the license, but essentially what it allowed the maker of the bolt to do is get a specific die through the spec that would create a thread that was more like smoothed out at the end, so that when these went into bowl feeding systems into their sub assemblies, they would you probably know what I'm talking about. They'll hit the female the thread, and it'll feed in easier, so you can
Yeah.
increase your manufacturing throughput or cycle time or whatever you want to call it. And that was
Hmm.
kind of like, I mean, those guys made a lot of money. And once that product was patented, proprietary, and specced out at GM, hey, the royalties floated. Are you trying to do that with this product too? Like, is this something that these OEMs in let's say heavy equipment and over the road trucking, should they be speccing this in at an engineering level for their
Well,
suppliers to, I don't know, purchase it? I guess I'm not sure because you manufacture it, right? So it's not like you need
mhm.
you don't need someone to manufacture this to create a royalty, but you need it put into an actual subsystem.
Yeah. I'll just fill in a couple of, and this is purely theoretical, Peterbilt trucks. If Peterbilt wanted to put this on all of their trucks so that they would get, better fuel economy than the competition, yeah, they could certainly do that, and they could just buy these and put them on. Where your question was going earlier, though, was why isn't anybody doing this? I got to put on my skeptic's hat here a little bit because I've been in the industry, and where an engine builder like Cummins, Caterpillar, and any of the other ones, where they're going to make the most money of all their operations is selling spare parts for engine rebuilds. And that's well known. That's not proprietary, And so follow the money. Are they going to want their engine to last longer? Only if competition forces them to do it, right?
So essentially, they want it to last a year longer than the competition. But it's like oil pricing. It's like OPEC, right? They want the price to be just low enough to de-incentivize anyone else from pumping oil somewhere else, but as high as they can have.
Sure.
Similar philosophy here, right? You want to have the highest name and quality, but if you shot for the stars, then you'd have nothing left to increase your shareholder value.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if kind of whoever does this first, then everybody else is going to have to do something like it to stay competitive.
Yeah.
So okay, let's dive back because we're getting the technical side of this real quick, but let's dive back into you during COVID when you lost when you started your business.
Yeah.
Were you approached by these people to support them, or were you helping them with it? How did you decide what you were going to do to earn an income?
Yeah, well, a friend of mine told me about this technology, this product, and it certainly caught my attention. So that's when I flew down to Florida, as I mentioned, and talked to all these people, whatever, and decided, yeah, I could do this. And the way I approached it impressed the company as well. And so we both decided, yeah, let's work together on this.
Okay, but you own your own company. You're a basically a contractor for them.
I would probably a distributor would be a better word.
Okay, yeah. Sure. Okay.
But it's a small privately held company, so there's not a lot of us involved. And we're trying to make some things work now.
Where are they in Florida? Can you say?
Trying to remember it's close to Palm Beach, but it's not.
Okay. South Florida.
Just a little north of Palm Beach. I can't remember the name of the suburb that it is. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's South Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, Florida's been known to be a very big startup business state, so that's exciting to hear. And
so you would have exclusivity as a distributor in exchange for the contract to produce the part, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, you're getting into some contractual stuff there.
Don't go there if I'm asking you. I'm just trying to figure out, just to make it sense.
Yeah, we have exclusivity.
Yeah,
I would say limited exclusivity. But again, there's only a few of us enough in the business. We all know each other. So we stay out of each other's way.
It's okay. So they sell distributorships, or they contract distributorships, and is it wide open territory for you? Am I stepping on contracts there also?
Well, a little bit, but no. I mean, because I've done enough with everybody and still so involved with the inventor and such that my territory is pretty much global, but I don't have exclusivity globally.
Okay.
I have a number of people that work with me. I call them sub-distributors, and most of those people are like ex-Caterpillar people or ex-Caterpillar dealers or such, people that I've befriended in my career. And, they're looking for something to do. They find me and they go, hey, maybe we could do something together like we used to do at CAT. And I'm like, let's go, man. Let's try it.
Okay. All right.
Those relationships, are when you build them, you never know where they're going to go. When they're going to come back.
100%. I mean, as a sales guy, that's one of my mountaintop shoutings is relationship building. So, because you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
A customer could turn into, who knows, or a friend could turn into something. Yeah. You never know who you're talking to. When you got involved in this, what were you looking for to start up your business?
I was a complete babe in the woods as an entrepreneur. Had no idea what I was doing. And I know I'm not the only guy that started the business not knowing what they're doing. But yeah, I really didn't know anything. And so, but I, again, like we talked about, you're kind of forced into it. So it's like, okay, I got to do this. Let's figure it out.
Right.
And so listened to all kinds of webinars, read a bunch of stuff, talked to a bunch of experts, people willing to help me, stuff like that. And eventually kind of got it figured out. Spent some investment money at the wrong places at the wrong time along the way, like most other entrepreneurs. Some of these things you
like everyone
learn from the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, like everybody does.
Yeah. And I kind of like sharing that story with people, though, about making mistakes, because a lot of times on perhaps podcasts or social media, for sure, everybody's portrayed as, I know exactly what I'm doing, and boy, this has gone so well, and boy,
because they're lying.
No problems. Oh, yes.
Well, when you said I didn't know what I was doing, that. I was going to say like everyone.
Yeah.
No one knows what they're doing. Yeah. It's who steps out.
It's really it's really funny you say that, because I was talking to a guy the other day, he's a podcast coach, I guess you call it, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
And he was basically telling me that you need to find your authority and then obviously build on that. Well, your authority might be commercial engineering, but that might not be what something is needed at that moment. So you might have to rebrand yourself. Did you find that when you became an entrepreneur, you might have had to rebrand yourself a little too?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was being a corporate guy my whole life. I fit into the corporate world, and, here's kind of the path to advancement, and, here's what you do, here's what you don't do in this particular culture. So yeah, I had to learn a lot of things all over again. And, also as a solopreneur, when you first start out, you're alone. So, you're also the bookkeeper and the guy that, sweeps the floor, and, as well as the president and all these things. So you got to learn a lot of new stuff. But my personality is that I've always loved learning new stuff. And so I've actually had a really good time, even though there's been a lot of heartache and a lot of, misplaced investments, and, on and on and on it goes. But learning new stuff has always just been a real thrill to me. And so, as I'm learning how to do bookkeeping, or how to do, file business taxes, or, how to do a marketing, how to do cold email outreach, things like that,
But you had
yourself that. While you were teaching yourself that, did you ever realize relearning and reinventing yourself, rebranding, whatever, when you were going on the sales side of it, because you are so knowledgeable, and you're obviously, your level of knowledge is far superior to mine on this product, obviously. Did you have to learn to teach yourself not to product vomit all over somebody and become a sales guy and all right, I know when to talk and when not to talk? Because sometimes that is a problem. When you're an expert in an area, you can product dump really, really bad, and then the people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I think one of the things a salesman needs to learn how to do, especially, an engineer type or whatever, is when to shut up.
Yeah.
I kind of took a slow slide into sales at Caterpillar. I started out as a pretty hard engineering, whatever, but then just got into what we had called new product introduction, where you're basically a project manager for new products coming along. And part of the whole project is getting voice of customer. And so I had some good experience there, talking to customers, talking to dealers, that had all the customer experience. And and so anyway, I kind of wound up sliding through that actually into being a salesperson there at CAT. And at CAT, there's not very many sales guys because that's almost always left to the dealers.
Uh-huh.
The dealers, they do the sales. They have the
Yes.
customer interaction and that's why you have to listen to a dealer very closely when he's talking, because he knows what he's talking about. But I sold kind of some niche engine and transmission combinations into a pretty niche market, and that most dealers kind of didn't want to deal with. So they had a few customers, so they just kind of bring me in to talk to the customer.
Yeah, well, let's talk to the engineer. He knows everything.
Yeah, right. And so I got really kind of a rare opportunity at CAT to work with the dealer network and a lot of direct customer interaction. And so that taught me a lot about kind of sliding into sales from an engineering thing. Because although I'm a decent engineer, I'm not a typically overly nerdy engineer. Get along well with people and
Right.
love the people side of the business. In fact, I always kind of tease that, on the engineering side, if you do the math right, you get the same answer every time, but you're dealing with people, you never get the same answer twice.
No,
And that
never.
makes I think it makes it more exciting,
And you may even talk to the same person more than once, and it's still not the same answer.
Oh,
So
of course. Yeah, absolutely.
100%. One of my favorite stories, and we kind of joked about it earlier, but I sold a truck to an engineer once, and I did this for some reason. This one has always stuck out because he was so hard to read. Like, he was completely opposite of me. Like, I'm super sanguine and he's the, total opposite. And so what I did was he told me what he wanted. I went and found the exact vehicle. I pulled it up. I told him the direction for the drive. He went out and drove, and I just sat back and didn't say a word and let him ask questions. And when we got back, he goes afterward, he said, yeah, let's go talk numbers, blah, blah, blah. So after we get back and he buys the truck and he says, do you know why I bought from you? And I said, because you wanted the truck. He's like, no. He goes, because you didn't product dump on me. He goes, I could probably tell you more about this vehicle than you even know. And he goes, you just sat back and let me enjoy it. And he said, I appreciated that. He goes, every salesman wants to try and, try the smooth sales talk. And he goes, you said, basically, you shut up. And I said, well, dude, you're way smarter than me. So what was I even going to talk to you about, other than the truck? And you already knew about it. So I learned my lesson there. And then there's people who want you to product dump on them because they want to know, because they don't know. So you really have to know your audience.
Yeah.
But I know in probably in chemical engineering, and maybe not, but if you're out talking to someone, unless it's another chemical engineer for the company, you might get the CEO or whoever you're talking to, they get the glazed over look like, I don't know what you're talking about anymore now. So that's when you have to back off, I guess.
Yeah. I have a real kind of a balanced presentation that I try to talk about people. Because like earlier, I was talking about the molecules getting shorter, that kind of stuff. And I always, when I'm going to have a serious conversation presentation with somebody, I always try to cover that little bit of chemistry.
Sure.
Because I don't want people to think this is some sort of a magic black box.
It's
There's
magic.
way too many people out there, with, so I can save you lots of fuel. Well, how's it work? Well, it's magic, no. And so I go out of my way to, like I talked about these cartoons I've made, little videos or whatever, to help people understand. If you can remember your high school chemistry, this is going to make sense. I'll help you remember your high school chemistry.
Right.
And so I always try to do that. But otherwise, yeah, let's talk about what you want to talk about, Mr. Customer. You ask the questions. Because that's what's, it's your company. This is your decision. You're the one that's going to have to try to sell this project internally, et cetera. How can I support you?
Have you had ones where you just walk in and you show it to them and they're like, this is what we're looking for, and they're right on top of it? Or is everybody pretty much, show me the numbers,
Well, it's almost an in-between situation, because almost everybody that I kind of give a presentation to, they say, this, I believe it. This looks really good. But then the second thing they always say is, we want to test it. Because even though I can show them, in fact, in my presentation on the website, even, we have over 100 test cases, laboratories and other customers and whatever. Everybody wants to test it themselves.
Sure.
Nobody will believe any numbers except their own. And, that's human nature, right? I get it. So then my job becomes to show them or educate them how you can test something. Because, sometimes, the usual response is, well, okay, we'll buy one and try it. And then I kind of have to politely say, well, no, I'm not going to sell you just one because
Right.
statistics, let's talk about statistics for a moment. If you flip a coin and it lands on heads, well, then if you only got one data point, well, every time I flip a coin, it lands on heads. My data shows
Right.
it, you know? And of
Right.
course, we all know that that's ridiculous. But, you know, when you get to a little more complex system, I don't know, let's just look at a mining truck or something. You've got tire pressure that makes a difference. You've got driver variability that makes a difference. You have the density of what you filled up in the bed of your truck. Are you going uphill or are you going downhill? On and on and on it goes. And so you have to have enough data for all those other things to cancel each other out so that you're only looking at the effect of the catalyst. And
Well,
that takes a little
that makes total
that
sense.
takes a
Yeah.
little educating sometimes because if somebody hasn't really had a statistics background, they go, well, wait a minute, no, if I put one on, it works, it works. Well, there's too many other things that you're not thinking about there, that could be affecting your result.
Excellent. Derek, do you have a question? I see you thinking.
No, I mean, that's just pretty. People take. It's not uncommon for people to do a test and not isolate one variable at a time. If you stick one of these things,
Absolutely.
if you stick
Yeah.
one of these things on one unit and you don't isolate the variables, you have no test, you have no data.
That's right. Then you have a flipping of the coin, with
unless
one test.
you're gonna take the same drive with the same unit 1,000 times with the same person, the same pressure applied to the gas at the same velocity, at the same angle of hill, with the same wind, with the same load, on and on and on and on and on. So I actually appreciate the in-house testing because the best quality people go to the scene and they go and see themselves. I mean, they have the education and they have the background. But in reality, what wins that war at the end of the day is going and seeing and creating and analyzing the data like yourself, hands-on. So I imagine people just want to think this is it's like saying, hey, now instead of 10 miles to the gallon on my sports car, I get 20. But when I drove it at 10, I had a lead foot, and 20, I drove like a grandma. Well, you don't know. Like, it could have just been your driving style. It could have been you drove 2 miles down the road. It could have been you went on a 10-mile highway drive. Like, there's too many variables to isolate. So it would make sense that you would have some type of testing protocol or a controlled environment to basically kind of show them what that's doing.
I like to help people understand the statistics behind it, and I kind of show them a graph that if you test 5 units, you're going to get about a 75% confidence level that that's really that you're looking at that thing and not all these other factors that are coming and going. And occasionally somebody will say, "Well, I want to be 100% certain." Well, then you need to test.
Then you need to take a statistics
machine
course and learn
on
about standard deviation. So
exactly, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty basic.
Where are they seeing?
And I help them do their data too. They'll send me, I worked with one railroad one time. They sent me about 5 million pieces of data. 5 million data points. It's like, well, fire up the old Excel spreadsheet and see what we can do here, And so, but the more data is always better than less data, But again, you have to kind of, that's just to establish did it work or not. Then you have to go through all the internal.
Have you thought of investing in like
topics,
testing? Have you thought of investing in, when you make automotive or heavy equipment components, each manufacturer has test cells for different parts of the line, right? Or inspection units. And sometimes they're for multiple types of material that are commodities, and sometimes they're actual line specific, like inline testing or whatever it may be. Have you ever thought of working on equipment or investing in something like that where it can be specifically put on a line? Or sorry, I'm being really generic here, but I think you understand what I mean. Like testing equipment where you can have an isolated environment without all the variables and test your same unit 10,000 times in a 1 week period, and then just spit the data, through an HMI PLC, and your engineer has it right there. And then they can be like, oh,
We,
cool. And then they'll go sell it to their product development. And then they'll be the catalyst in their company for the guy with the CFO will go, this looks good. Let's buy 10,000 of these. Have you ever thought of that? Like, I'm sure you have.
Well, we long ago, millions of dollars were spent on those kinds of tests, and again, I have many documents of test cell output, showing that this thing works, and gives you your 5 to 7% or more. But again, if it's not the cut, everybody wants to test themselves,
Right.
So I can show them this kind of data and it won't make any difference, because people want to test it themselves.
So with the testing, have you, and it might be different levels, obviously, when you have huge diesel like trains or boats, ships, 18-wheelers, mining equipment. Have you seen, which one is seeing the greatest results?
Probably one of the ones that get you the best results is this oil-fired boiler I was talking about. There's not a lot of those. Like up in the northeast of the United States, there's a lot of boilers that heat schools and heat buildings and stuff that use that, use fuel oil. But around the world, there's not a lot. But there you see, and I don't have my presentation up with all the numbers, but there you're seeing probably over 10% as an average.
Okay.
But what did you say? Also, whatever has the largest consumption too, because when you say 5 to 7%, let's just talk in layman's terms for the audience. Miles per gallon, right? If a vehicle is a hybrid that gets 80 miles to the gallon or something, 5 to 7% is actually a bigger. I know it's more miles on the more efficient vehicle, but it's more money saved in terms of something that's consuming more and is less efficient currently, right? So would you say a generality possibly is whatever has the most current consumption because of the byproduct that you're now saving?
Well, that's going to give you your biggest payback, but 5% of a big number is bigger than 5% of a small number.
Sure.
And so that kind of remains somewhat constant. But you were talking about relative difference. Like for some reason, over the road trucks, I changed my pitch a little bit there and say that's normally in the 3 to 5% range, and anything on heavier equipment is more like 5 to 7. And why that difference is, I don't know. I don't know anybody that does know either. But in general, when you're testing on over the road trucks, you're getting this 3 to 5. Everything else looks like it's about 5 to 7 or more.
That's interesting. Because I would have thought the over the road trucks, because they're consistent on the highway, doing 75, 80, whatever they're doing, it would be the consistency. You think it'd be a greater number because it's more, instead of the guys driving down into a pit, getting a big dump truck full and driving back out, you would think that an 18-wheeler would do better, but that's very interesting. Okay.
But again, it's almost like this constant percentage, like, your idea of a mining truck there. Yeah. You got starts and stops, you got, up and down, you're hauling, a lot of heavy load and stuff. Like on a truck you mentioned, you're using all your fuel when you pull away from the stop sign, right? Getting that thing up to speed. And once you're up to 70, it really doesn't take much horsepower to keep you at 70.
Correct.
Not nearly as like the 400.
So constant velocity probably lowers your percentage of savings if you're not, because you're already the no matter the weight of the load or the efficiency of the vehicle, if you're already in motion, right? If you're already, is that constant velocity? Is that kinetic energy? I don't know.
Not just in motion, tends to stay in motion. Yeah.
So are you saying that is that maybe a reason why over the road would be a lower percentage because it has more time in where it's already in motion instead of actually accelerating with the load?
Probably not. And the reason I say that is if you have a nice steady load, like take a diesel generator, you're running your diesel engine, 300, 500, 1,000 horsepower, whatever engine you got on there, and you're generating electricity. That's a really nice steady load. In fact, that's if somebody wants to prove this thing out on their own equipment. If they have a generator, I'll usually try to steer them towards a generator because you don't have driver difference, you don't have tire pressure, you don't have a lot of these things, so it could be a nice steady load. But a nice steady load on a truck is still going to get 3 to 5%, and a nice steady load on a generator is going to get 5 to 7.
Wow.
So yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why there's a difference.
Someone's got to know why. That's going to drive me
around
crazy. That's got to keep you up,
Right? Because you're the genius. You should know that for us.
That
Come
has
on
to
now.
keep you up all night, every night. It just has to. If it's making me eat myself,
I've been an engineer long enough to know stuff just happens,
yeah,
Right.
and you don't have to figure everything out.
Right.
Let's dip back for a second to sustainable energy. We're talking about over the road trucks. There's a guy in Canada who's come up with a fully electric 18-wheeler.
Hmm.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful truck. Actually, I was working for back when I was in the car days, and a friend of mine showed it to me, and he's like, you should get a dealership down here. Anyway, it did not take off.
Tesla's making a tractor like that. Yeah.
Right, but it didn't take off because the problem was an 18-wheeler can get X amount of miles, and the electric one's only going to get Y. And then they got to go plug in and sit. So the downtime was really killing him, even though he had put a second motor in it. So when this one was slowly down and the other motor would turn on, and then that one would recharge itself, it just wasn't able to keep up with the diesel. But I mean, they're showing it up in Canada, driving through the snow and the mountains, and it still was, pulling away from diesel trucks like nobody's business. It just, they had more downtime, which was the biggest argument. And, I know that was a huge thing. I know California, if I remember the story, that was really looking at it because they're trying to go, like I said, everything electric. I mean, lawnmowers, blowers, cars, everything. Right. And I was talking to my buddy who owned the trucking company about it because he was actually very interested in it. And he said, the only reason I would get a couple of these is so I can go to California, because when they go fully electric, you can't cross the border. They're going to make you stop. And then you're going to have to load another truck that's electric to go deliver it in California. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is now we're getting kind of ridiculous. Now you're really wasting time. And, obviously you're not going to have to unload a whole trailer. You just switch trailers with the tractor. But I mean, I thought the electric truck would have been fantastic, but I see the guys like, look, dude, my guy can drive for, 9 hours a day or 10 hours, whatever the legal limit is. Whereas the electric truck has to stop every 300 or 500 miles to go charge itself, where my guy's still going. He's got 2 tanks and he's chugging. Yeah. So sustainable energy, I think, is a great concept. I think it's still at the drawing board stages. I know we've got Tesla, we've got Rivian, we've got a couple other ones out there. And, I see them all the time. Actually, funny story. The first day I had my big diesel 2500, I pulled up to a 3-way stop sign, and on either side was 2 Teslas, and I'm in my big diesel truck, and they're both looking at me, shaking their heads. I was like, whatever, dude. I will drive over your car, and I get out of my way. So, I mean, I just find it hilarious. But what is your passion with sustainable energy? I know that I read that in the email you sent me, that's something that's very near and dear to you. Is that going to be an aspect to your business that you're going to be going to that direction? Can we talk about it?
Yeah, well, my big thing is, let's not wait for 25 years to be all electric locomotives or whatever,
Right.
in almost any of those, especially the heavier duty fields. Cars, I think, electric cars, I think, are doing pretty well. But again, they're more expensive, aren't they?
Yes.
And the 18-wheeler tractor you're talking about is going to be significantly more expensive than a diesel tractor. And so if you have to mandate that for everybody, like California is going to try to do, then we'll see if that actually, really works. Because
they could get a different governor next month, and then that might be a whole new ball game.
Well, yeah, and just kind of like the refinery shutting down. Sometimes reality hits you in the face, and it's like, like electric. Everybody in our country knows that we don't even have enough electricity to provide for what we've got. We're making AI data centers provide their own electricity.
Huge frustration here in Florida. I believe, this is me personally, every house, every business, every land that can get it should have solar on it, because we can probably produce enough electricity to run our state for sure, and then sell it. Because why are we buying electricity from elsewhere when we can just use our natural? Because we have 300 days of sunshine down here. I mean, it's just foolishness. I mean, I have solar on my house. I had to learn the hard way when we lost power. My lights didn't come back on. Well, it's not because I'm actually selling power back to Duke. And I'm like, well, I don't like that. I want my own power. Now I got to buy a power wall, but that's beside the point.
That's right. You got to buy a battery system. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to buy a power wall. Yeah. And so, I'm a firm believer in solar for sure, especially down here. Every friggin' house should have it on it. And maybe the government could put it on it, and the government could make money selling electricity, whatever. And I think that would really, really help in the long run, right? They said coal was the worst thing on the planet. Obviously, we're never going to get rid of it. Just like they're never going to get rid of oil, because it's in everything. We use it for everything, right? I think that we can maybe marry somewhere along the line sustainable energy and use, combustible too, and make them all more efficient and better running. Now, we talked earlier, Derek brought up India and China. I had a friend who went over to a big, huge convention in China. They have every year for all he told me this whatever you call it, where they have the big convention, the convention center. I couldn't think of the word. Is like, it takes 3 days just to walk from one side to the other. That's how big it is. And it's a big vendor event. They sell everything. So if you want to sell widgets and gadgets and gizmos, there's the place to go from China.
Probably
right?
The Canton Fair.
I think so. But he said the one thing that he was completely disgusted about China was when you walked outside, you had to wear a mask because the pollution was so horrible over there. And I said, so it's kind of like LA when they get the haze because they're down in the bowl, they get the haze. He's like, no, this is a million times worse. Yeah. So I don't know that we'll ever even compete with China with EPA, because I don't know that they care. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it just seems that way. But we should make at least America sustainable, and I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Where that's kind of where I live, and that's what my business is all about, is let's do some sustainability while we can.
Sure.
Going solar, electrical, everything, that's great, but then you have to have your solar cars and your solar trucks and everything else, to try to eliminate. And we all know, I have solar on my house too. I think it's great. But we all know that the world isn't going to be all electric anytime soon.
No.
And in the meantime,
I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime.
We do some of this off the shelf stuff to make a dent in the CO2. And I don't even harp on CO2 so much. It absolutely is. But when it pays for itself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, in payback, you got these enormous returns on investment on this thing. Mm-hmm. Why don't we put a little bit of our energy into doing that? Your CFO is going to love it. Your chief sustainability officer, if you have one of those, is going to love it. You can get a lot of bragging rights, in the public sphere, if you want to, call it that. Let's do something now. So when I talk about sustainability, I'm not talking about, the 25, 35 year out thing. There's a lot of smart people working on that, and I'd say congratulations on that. Go for it. But let's get some other people working on what we can do today. I have kind of an expression I've been using on LinkedIn lately that I think we have enough thought, what we call them, thought experts. Now, what's the word we use? Thought
Think
leaders.
Tank, or thought leader.
We have enough thought leaders on this topic. What we really need is some execution leaders. Somebody's going to do something today.
Yes.
Instead of just trying to map out a plan for the next 25 years.
What a concept.
And here's the downside. And
Go ahead, Derek.
Just do it as Nike says. Just do it, right? But here's the downside too. Also, and I'm going to throw this out there for electric cars. My son-in-law is a firefighter.
Okay.
One of the most horrific things that he ever has to deal with is when a Tesla catches on fire.
Yeah.
Miami literally has forklifts on the fire departments, they go hook them and drop them into the lagoon because they can't put them out. They just have to let them burn underwater.
Yeah,
And
well, that's the nature of lithium. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's, and the other thing is the batteries can't ever be destroyed. Like they can't get rid of them. So we're going to, we got to come up with better ideas, I think. And I'm sure Elon and his boys are thinking of ways because, that's what they do. But, just there's hiccups in everything. That's why I say in our lifetime, I don't think we're going to see anything go full electric ever, but I think we can move in a direction, as you're saying, to do stuff right now that can happen right now.
I mean, we're making progress.
What would you implement?
We're making progress in electric cars and electric trucks and some electric construction equipment or whatever. And I say great, but I'm also a real free market guy. We'll let the market kind of decide, which way to go. And, as far as government subsidies we were talking about earlier, most governments, consider that's their position to try to juice a new technology along, because when you first start it, it's not going to compete because you don't have economies of scale or anything else, and so it makes some sense to do some subsidies. But if you're year after year after year, the only reason you're competitive is because of subsidies, I mean, something's wrong. We could take biodiesel, for example. That's a word most of us have heard of, at least. It's a different
Smells
form.
like French fries.
Well, yeah.
Or Chinese food.
Yeah. What are they? Something methyl esters is actually what a biofuel, but I have pictures of those in my presentation, and it's basically some extra oxygens on that long chain molecule. But again, it's like, I think I just did some research on this the other day. I think it's about 50 cents a gallon, maybe 40 cents of subsidy, that brings the price down to parity with regular diesel. And so, you and I as taxpayers are paying that every time somebody fills up their tank, with biodiesel. We're paying for part of that, and biodiesel has been around for a long time now. When's the time to kind of cut the cord on that? And I'm not advocating one thing or another about that, and nothing against the ethanol industry, the biodiesel industry, or anything else. We're all doing something, and I think that's great. But yeah, as a society, we do need to decide when's the time to stop the subsidies on that. Renewable diesel is another one. That's very heavily subsidized, right now. And then, again, I'm not necessarily against that either, to start something and see how it goes. But again, we could talk all night about other alternatives as well, because
Sure.
Where I'm at in life and all, I'm up to date on all that sustainability stuff and how they compare with each other and whatever.
But we all know that at a certain point with the business, if you can't get a P&L positive, then there's a time to cut the cord, right? And people might have different opinions on that. And obviously the energy industry, I mean, look at Tesla, right? How many years, how many near failures, how many times did that almost go under, and how much subsidy have they received? But now, fast forward 20 some years later, they're really the only profitable electric vehicle OEM. They're it.
Yeah.
Would he ever gotten to that without subsidies? No. Well,
right.
Probably not.
Unless he self-funded it, he's in a unique position.
Which he did, but there's certain times, with SpaceX and with Tesla, where the round of investment was so great that it was either going to work or it wasn't going to. Just kind of like when Disney came out with Cinderella. The company was either done or or off to the races, and they were off to the races. That probably happened. That happened every 5 years till 5 years before Walt died, right? I mean, same thing with this too. Like, for a company, you might say, well, if you can't get the P&L positive in 3-4 years, you should close it down. But if you have the P&L positive, you never stop investing in your company either, right? So with alternative energy, the problem is that the innovation and the barriers and cost to entry are probably so great that there's no one in the world who can figure out when the time is to let the free market decide, yet allow these technologies to live. And in my opinion, with like electric, is we probably should have stayed out of the subsidies with companies who kind of just wanted to get in the game for the subsidies, and we probably should have just let like the only profitable one, the private one, build some of the infrastructure for us, because he probably would have done it because he knew the competition would have been less, so the return would have been better. You know what I'm saying? But all of that being hindsight, I think it's just I think people argue over it, and the problem they get divisive over it, but no one really has the answer to that. No one really has the answer other than we do want the private market to really guide us in how we go about these things. And there's things that you're doing, there's things with hydrogen, there's things with electric, there's things with plug-in hybrids. There's so many good things happening, and I think we gotta let some people throw some poop against the wall and figure some stuff out. It's great. They're all great. It's not going to be the one all be all energy source probably for generations and lifetimes, but there's some really good things that can happen and are happening out there that are exciting. Like you're doing.
And I'm excited about those.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited about them. And,
Right.
and I think they're great. My message has always been, well, what are we doing in the meantime? Let's not forget about what's available off the shelf here, fellas, and let's do some things. This another person that I really love to talk to is the poor beleaguered sustainability champion, or decarbonization champion that almost every company has now. So they're given these wonderful lofty goals, but they're not given any budget to meet it. And I love talking to those types, because I say, look, this technology here is going to let you get some of your goals met, and the company is going to support you because you're handing them a huge cost reduction at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get a win-win out of this.
Yeah, it's like they're getting free R&D money essentially. Like their metrics are saying, look at this can support the P&L. Let's research and develop, the initiatives now that he's not negatively
take all that extra money you're going to save. Yeah, do whatever you want to with the money you're going to save
instead of just slitting the same guy's throat every 3 years. You've seen it happen.
Yeah. So as we're winding down, we do like a little rapid fire.
Good.
Quick question, a couple quick questions. Number one, you're a diesel expert. Why is diesel so expensive?
Well, I don't have all the answers for that.
Because regular gas is refined.
Like any other price, it's what the market will bear. Diesel has more BTUs per weight or per volume, actually, than gasoline, because gasoline is less dense. And so that's one reason you're actually buying more energy when you buy a gallon of diesel than when you buy a gallon of gasoline.
Sure.
So there's some reason why there's more stuff in it. So that's one reason why it's more expensive.
It used to frustrate me because I'd fill my truck and I'm like, man, this is so expensive. It used to be the cheapest gas. It's not even refined. Why are they? Anyway,
it is less refined than gasoline. Yes.
So as an entrepreneur, what is next on your list to do? What is your next challenge you'd like to take on?
Well, what I really want to do, I want to get this thing really saturated in the market. And I'm a long way from that yet. So for the foreseeable future, I'm still going to be promoting this and preaching it, if you want to call it that, and, trying to make this technology known, because most people really don't know that it exists. People ask me sometimes about, what's my competition? And it's like, well, unawareness is really, that's my biggest competitor. And the second one is probably liquid additives that you have to add to your tank. People get confused with that a lot too. But other than that, boy, if people just kind of hear the word, this is available, and it's not just some guy out here screaming in the wilderness about it. Talk to me. I'll show you the data. I'll show you the other customers that are using it. I'll do anything I need to help you understand, what this can do for your company.
What does the product obviously saves them fuel and money, and it also is very good for the environment? Okay, so it's a win-win.
Yes, exactly. If you burn 5% less fuel, you're producing 5% less CO2, right? I mean, that's just
right.
But you also get lower emissions totally out of this because you get more efficient combustion. So it means less soot, less carbon monoxide, less NOx, all those things. Um, Here's something else that's kind of interesting about this, though. If you think about like what wears out an engine, soot, right? Because you got all those little tiny particles in there, abrasives working on your piston rings, your piston liners, your valve train and stuff. Well, if you
Mhm.
have less produced, that means you have less abrasives in your
Longer life.
system. Yeah. And so the engines will last longer. We don't make
Right.
any promises about that because it's really hard to measure and all that. But one of our oldest customers that's been with us the longest time, they have got 50% more out of their engines. So, from like if you need a top end overhaul, they've extended that to 50% longer than the recommendations.
Okay, perfect.
And also, we think
Um,
about what fouls up your oil, soot and VOCs. And if you're making less of those, that means less is going to go into your oil, so your
Your oil life.
oil change interval is longer.
Mm-hmm.
okay. And where can everybody find you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, let me plug it again. Decarbonize5.com. Think of that 5% we've been talking about this whole time. Decarbonize5.com. And that's going to get you to some calculators where you can run some sliders back and forth and put in your own fuel use, whatever, and you can see what it's worth, not only in money, but how many tons of CO2 you're going to save, across your fleet. And of course,
Excellent.
there's an option to book a meeting with me as well. Let's
Yeah,
talk.
and they can do everything through that site.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Let's have a conversation. And you're sort of all, let's talk. I'm just a normal guy. Let's talk.
And you are located in Illinois?
I'm in Illinois. Yep.
Okay. But you'll travel anywhere they want you to come see them.
Well, if there's potential, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Today's technology, like we're on now, you just that has really cut
Yeah,
distance.
most meetings are done by Zoom nowadays anyway. We're Scott, the guy or I had on last week, was mentioning after COVID, he said, you lost the handshake and belly to belly sales because everybody wants to do video now. So, but
Yep.
that's okay. You learn how to deal with it.
You do. You do. I still
Excellent.
like the interaction, even if it's face to face like this, not actually breathing each other's air. I still love it.
Excellent. Do you have anything you need to promote besides the product?
No.
Okay.
Let's do something now. And if it's going to pay back wonderfully like this does, why not? That's kind of my message to the poor beleaguered sustainability champion, and even for the VP who's got the P&L responsibility for fuel. Let's talk.
Excellent. Derek, do you have anything you need to wrap up with?
I think you need to make friends with a really good politician and push the narrative. To be honest with you, I think you'd feel good at the end of the day too, because you could actually do something now about what we're talking about, right? We talk about the carbon output, blah 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 blah. Well, right now with our current energy source, you can frickin' put this put this put this before you hit the engine, and you have progress immediately overnight. I feel like the biggest battle you're fighting is probably, you talked about aftermarket parts sales and OEMs wanting wear and tear on their engines, and this is actually extending that. Like, there needs to be some type of crossover to get a premium price out of that product, from the end user, because they're gonna be the ones saving on the economy, right? And on they're not going to need to repair the engine as much. So that if there's some type of testing and publications that prove that this engine is so much more durable, has longer oil life, has less emissions, and better fuel efficiency, I mean, that should be more value to the end user. The OEM should say, well, what does that take in terms of aftermarket sales to amortize into a higher price per unit? Someone's got to be out there, man. Got to be the right people out there to figure out that rock. That's genius, right? That's like, you got to have a business person with a degree.
I
And
think you should
a
be a
brain.
politician, Derek.
I've always got a piece of paper here in front of me, but I want to share. You talked about overall, just in trucking in the United States alone, we use about 42 billion gallons of diesel each year. And if you were to, let's take this middle number, 4%, if you were to reduce fuel consumption by 4%, that saves 1.7 billion gallons of diesel fuel. And You can just multiply by your $3 a gallon or whatever, diesel is, $4. Well, but also essentially here, importantly, it's 16.7 million tons of CO2 we'd save as well. And that's just one industry in one country.
That's fantastic. So we got to sell it to us and Canada and Mexico, and then we'll be okay. North America will be fine. We'll be good.
You got to get into politics, man.
Well, that's your calling, Derek. You should become a politician.
No, I'd be getting a kickback. I'd get thrown out.
Well, of course.
I beg Brian, give me 1%, man. We'll get my a district on board with you real quick.
There we go. Yeah.
Brian, we want to thank you for being on the show tonight. You brought some great information that I didn't even know I needed to know, but now I do, and we appreciate it. Our listeners, I'm sure, appreciate it. And everybody, say your website one more time.
Yeah, decarbonize5.com. Get a hold of me.
Decarbonize5.com. That will be down in the bio. Also, in the bio will be two of our newest sponsors. I'm sorry, guys, I haven't written the commercials for them, but our two new sponsors will be down there. So check them out. I am using one of the products. We're getting another product in. I'm going to give it to Derek because he likes that energy stuff. One's an energy drink. And anyway, we'll get to that later on. But everybody, we appreciate you guys listening. We love you as always. Make sure you check us out on all the socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube. The only thing is on everyone, we are under No Brainer Show, except for YouTube is No Brainer Shows with an S because someone else has it. And I'm going to find it and get it from them one of these days. And then, of course, if you don't like looking at my face, you can go on all the audio sites, and we're on everything on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else. Until next time, my voice will be shouting around the world next week. Thank you and have a great night. And Brian, once again, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for letting me have it and talk about something I'm passionate about. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for at No Brainer Show. Everybody out there, we love you. Peace.